Hey fam, welcome back to another video. If you've been watching our channel or other StudyTube channels for some time now, then you probably already heard of the Study Less, Study Smart lecture by the psychology professor Dr. Marty Lobdell. If you haven't heard of it, well, it's arguably one of the greatest study videos on YouTube of all time. Let me just paint the picture here. The video is 10 years old. Okay, it's super old. It has 12 million views. But the most impressive part is that it has over 500 views per hour still today. That's like a video on an average YouTube channel taking off, okay, like almost going viral. It's ridiculous. This video is that old yet still putting in work. The thing is, there will always be new students. There will always be school. So this topic will always be relevant. And especially now, since we're spending a lot of our time online, learning how to learn is just that much more important. But the problem is, this video is an hour long. Okay, no one's got time for that. But luckily, if you haven't watched it yet, well, I'm about to watch it for you. And I'll summarize the most important pearls for you in only a fraction of the time.
How long would you estimate the typical college freshman can read material in their book or in their notes and effectively be learning what they're reading? And typically, right about 25 to 30 minutes. By the way, it's also true of lectures, and you've all proved it to yourself. You come into a lecture, you're really alert, check the clock, at about 25 after, it's like, yeah, and I see it in every class I teach, but how long do we teach? 50 minutes. And yet, probably most of the learning, if it's going to happen, is in the first 25 to 30.
Okay, so he cites that the average student can only pay attention for 25 to 30 minutes. And after that, we tend to doze off or we get distracted and we aren't learning much. Then he goes on to say how ineffective lectures are because they're usually 50 minutes long. Meanwhile, his lecture right here on how to study less is an hour long. Anyway, the point he's trying to make here is that when you feel like you're slowing down, when you're reading the same sentence over and over and it's just not sticking, it's time to take a break. When you feel refreshed, study for another half hour, then take a break again.
The moment you start to slide, you're shoveling against the tide. What you need to do is what? Take a break. And here's what's cool about it. You can study for a half hour. It doesn't take a half hour break to recharge your batteries. For most people, about 5 minutes. And this is where you go away, do something fun for 5 minutes. Call a friend, talk to a child, talk to a parent, a roommate. Enjoy some music. Do something you enjoy and actually say, this is my treat for having studied for 30 minutes effectively. Go back and here's what happens. Your efficiency is nearly 100%. Study a half hour, take a break, study a half hour, study a half hour.
He's basically talking about the Pomodoro technique here. And I really love how he mentions that you can improve over time. Because your attention is like a muscle, you can train it. So see if you can challenge yourself to see how long your attention can last. But don't push yourself to the point where studying becomes miserable. Because then when you take breaks, you want to use the breaks as rewards so that you get this positive feedback loop. And then over time, you'll notice that you can stay focused for longer and longer.
Because you're now reinforcing it with those little breaks and something fun, you extend it. And you'll find you can go 30, 40, 50, an hour and a half. And this is training. Those of you who go on to advanced degrees, you're going to have to study incredible lengths of time without taking a break because you've got to get it done. Like my daughter in med school. It's just amazing. I've told her I couldn't do it now, or actually I wouldn't do it.
You'll eventually be able to extend your focus to the ideal 50-minute study and 25-minute break. I personally think that 5-minute breaks are kind of useless. It's way too short, but with a 25-minute break, you can at least fit in an episode of anime. Then as you keep extending out your attention span, maybe one day, you can join Maddie and me on our Pomodoro session where we studied for 12 hours straight. Good luck.
Get a little lamp. You probably have one already. If you don't, my gosh, yard sale, garage sale, you can pick them up for nothing. Get that lamp and it becomes your study lamp. You're ready to go, turn on the lamp and start studying. The moment you lose your edge, 15, 20, 30 minutes later, turn the lamp off, get up and leave the desk. What you're training yourself to study while seated there. And it becomes increasingly automatic, as did the raising of the hand. You sit, turn the lamp on, and you're ready to go. It's like magic. The students who did that were 1 grade point higher the next term compared to the control group that didn't do it. 1 grade point simply by creating a study area.
So the next big point he talks about here is to create a dedicated study spot. A lot of us study in bed, okay? But here's the thing. The primary function of the bed is for sleep. The secondary function is for sex. So studying can't really happen because when you lie in bed, your body's already conditioned to feel either sleepy or sexy. So studying is probably not gonna happen. Not to mention, it's bad for your back and your posture. So the same goes for all other areas of the house. If you study in the living room, where you normally watch TV, your body is going to be in a leisure state. If you study at the kitchen table, then your body is going to be in a hungry state. So the tip here is to create that special study spot to condition your body to only study in that spot. You can find a special desk, you can find a special sturdy lamp, maybe even a handy dandy comfy study sweatshirt, and the only thing you do in that spot is study. Okay, your body will be so conditioned to be in a study state that eventually when you sit your butt down in that familiar spot, your brain will be ready to learn. Okay, I need to stop the video right here because it's been about 25 minutes and theoretically my attention span should be shot and I need to take a 5-minute break. Who am I kidding? Let's keep going.
Can you put the concept in your own words? If you can't, you don't really understand it. Okay? It's not meaningful to you. To make it meaningful is a struggle. It's probably the biggest struggle you have as a student. But it's a struggle you need to do or you're wasting your study time. Now back to this active learning. How do you know it? If you can look at it, go to the next one, read it, and then stop and go back to the one before. Look up in the sky and in your own words, say what that was about. Yeah, you know it.
Okay, I love that he talks about active learning. Okay, if you've watched any number of videos on our channel, you know that active recall is by far the best way to learn. And he makes a very important distinction here between recollection versus recognition. So to demonstrate his point, think of a movie that you've seen multiple times. Okay, pick one of your favorite movies. Can you go through each scene and tell me exactly what happens scene by scene? Okay, it's harder than it seems. Because when you're actually watching the movie, it's easy because you're like, yeah, I've seen this before. I recognize what's about to happen. But if you turn off the movie and you have to recollect scene by scene straight from your memory, it's a lot harder. But that's how you truly test whether or not you actually know that movie. Okay, it's the exact same thing with studying. When you read your notes 2, 3, 4 times over, you're still just using recognition because you see what's on the page. You already know what the note says. Can you actually close your notes and recall them? Because that's how you actually are tested on the day of the exam.
How many know the best way to learn is to teach somebody else? Boy, if you've got family members or roommates, teach them. One of my dearest students 2 years ago, God, I just loved her. I finally met her parents. She says, I've heard so much about you. I hear every lecture you've given. She would come home, sit around the dinner table, and recapitulate what I talked about.
Okay, so he goes into a lot of different ways that you can use active learning. So first, you can teach what you just learned. Okay, if you can teach someone who's not taking the class, for example, you can teach your parents at the dinner table, or you can teach your baby cousin. If they get really confused while you're teaching them, then you probably haven't explained it clearly enough, which means you probably don't understand it at a fundamental level. Next, you can try writing it out, or typing it out, or even reciting it out loud. Anything to force you to put the information into your own words. The third way that he mentions is to try to flush out your notes immediately after class. Okay, if you can look at the notes that you just took in class and be able to recall the concept of what it was talking about, then I would say that was a productive class.
The first moment you get after a class, ideally right after the class, you should sit down with your notes and expand on everything you jotted down. Give it depth, flesh it out, okay? If you even wait to go home and do it a couple hours later, you'll have forgotten some of your own notes. How many of you have done that? You've written beautiful notes, you get them home, you don't know what the hell you wrote. It's like, what is this? Okay? Well, that's a wasted note.
All right, so those are 3 easy ways that you can get started with active learning, but he's only really brushing the surface because we actually made a video where we talk about 12 ways to use active learning.
Most students have not been taught how to use a textbook, and yet it's such a powerful tool. How many of you know of SQ3R? None? 1, 2. I assumed all my students were still learning this until a few years ago I asked. It died out. That you retain much more from a text if you survey, question, read, recite, and review.
Okay, so his next tip here is how to approach reading a textbook. And he mentions SQ3R, which stands for Survey, Question, Read, Recite, Review. SQ3R is an amazing tool, but I think it's a little outdated. And we actually revamped it in our video here, but basically we replaced the 3 R's with rephrase, recall, and repetition, which stand for active recall and spaced repetition. Okay, 2 of the best evidence-based learning strategies. You gotta have those 2. We go into much more detail in our video, but you can also visit our website where we have a free ebook download. We go into detail on how you can use this method, not only to read textbooks, but how to approach PowerPoints, presentations, and just lectures in general.
Most of you undo good studying by by not sleeping adequately. Some of the latest work on REMing, we're not sure exactly how, but there's something going on. It involves the hippocampus. It involves the storage from a transitory long-term memory to a permanent, what we call consolidation. That just labels it, doesn't really say what's happening. But we're getting increasing evidence that that consolidation process is dependent on rapid eye movement sleep, which if you're an adult happens about every hour and a half once you fall asleep. If you're not getting a good night, typically around 8 hours, you're not getting enough REM. What you've studied doesn't become permanent. And I can tell you there are studies that show simply by getting better rest, some students improve markedly in their performance because their brain now stores it a lot more efficiently.
All right, I gotta pause the video right here because I love the fact that he just mentioned the importance of sleep. Studying is a cognitively intensive practice. And to be a top class student, it really means that you need to keep your entire body, your overall health in top condition. Nutrition, exercise, stress relief, sleep. It's during the deepest stages of sleep that our brain actually forms long-lasting memories. But equally important is that if you don't get quality sleep, your brain doesn't get a chance to reset itself to be able to learn new information the next day. So we also made a video diving into the science of sleep as well. I mean, at this point, this video is literally just one big trailer for all of our study videos on our channel.
And by the way, guys, if you're enjoying this short version of an hour-long lecture, then you might also enjoy book summaries. And if so, I'd recommend you check out Shortform. Shortform provides some of the best book summaries out there, and it takes it even a step further by providing smart insights and analysis of the main ideas. I've been using Shortform to explore productivity, health, and business-related books, and I'm loving it. So in the spirit of study less, study smart, I think a really smart way to approach reading books is to first figure out, is this book even worth my time? For example, we've been learning a lot about sleep lately, and when we stumbled upon Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep, the book summary was actually what inspired us to check out the actual book and make this video right here. So go to shortform.com/Mike and Maddie and start reading more books than you did last year.
You can't study in the living area. It's not designed for that unless you're all by yourself. And you turn off the TV, turn down the stereo so it's truly background. If you're singing along to your favorite song, you're not studying. You're singing along to a song. Your brain has to be focused to be really studying, not time sharing back and forth between singing and studying.
Okay, once again, he alludes to yet another one of our videos. You shouldn't listen to music with lyrics while you're studying. It's really distracting. In fact, there are some types of music that are conducive to studying. Check out our video right here.
Mnemonics. In my view, they're quicker, easier than rote memorization, and I do use them. How many of you have learned that you can take letters and form a word of it, using those letters to remember certain facts?
His last big point here talks about memory techniques, especially mnemonics. The most important part of learning is to understand the big picture concepts first, and after that, memorizing all the little facts and details becomes much easier.
Anytime two things are highly similar but not the same, you get maximal interference. That's how we talk about problems with remembering. So you memorize it without really knowing it, and you're sitting there on a quiz going, oh yeah, it's afferent. No, it's efferent. No, it's afferent. So when I tell my students, really they're both the same. Sensory are afferent, motor, efferent. Now with that little acronym, SAME, you can study very little. They're both the same.
The way that I like to remember it is that afferent, A for arriving, and then efferent, E for exiting. Yeah, so using mnemonics is an easy way to memorize very complicated and confusing facts. But guys, I'm not even gonna go into any further detail here because once again, we have a video that dives into the science. 8 ways to master your memory in 8 minutes. Check it out.
I'm gonna make a challenge to all of you. It's so easy to sit through a presentation, say, yeah, that sounds good, and then walk away and do nothing. Technically, as a psychologist, if it doesn't change your behavior, you haven't learned it. It's just in your head. To be a true learning experience, you have to behave differently. So my hope is you all make a promise. I'll try at least 1 or 2 of what I talk about today, and when you find out it works, say, gosh, I'll try a 3rd one, maybe a 4th.
Okay, in my opinion, that right there was probably the most important part of this video. If it doesn't change your behavior, then it's still just in your head. So after this video, I also challenge you to try out some of these methods. Okay, there's a lot of stuff to learn here, but I would just pick maybe 1 or 2 things to start with and see how it goes for you. And if you start seeing results, then you can slowly start adding more and more methods as you go. It's all part of the learning process. It's what it means to be a lifelong learner. Just make sure that you're having fun in the process. You're doing it with friends, you're doing it with the community, then pay for what you learn and make the world a better place. Oh, man. Can't believe I just watched that at normal speed. It's a great video, a lot of great study tips, but in my opinion, really only scratching the surface. Okay, what really surprised me was that he didn't once mention spaced repetition. There's a whole world of neuroscience and psychology to explore right there. Okay, spaced repetition, it relates to how our memory works, memory decay, the forgetting curve. I mean, if you truly understand how to use spaced repetition, then you truly know what it means to be able to study less. And we've made it simple for you guys by building RemNote, which applies active recall and spaced repetition seamlessly into your learning so that you don't have to even think about it. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you've never heard of active recall, never heard of spaced repetition, or any of these other study tips, then obviously you're living under a rock, and you need to crawl out from under that rock and see the world. Life isn't about just studying all the time. You gotta learn how to study efficiently so that you have more time to spend with friends, family, hobbies, and just being a well-rounded and healthy student. If you need some guidance, we're here to help. I've compiled some of our best study videos into a playlist, which you can find right here.